As weeks turned into months, Harvey's banana leaf ritual didn't fade, it deepened. What started as a nightly attempt for relief became something sacred, layered with meaning beyond the physical. The act of steaming the leaf, smoothing it gently, and placing it over his chest became meditative. It calmed his nervous system before bed, yes, but it also softened the ache of grief, loneliness, and time. He realized it wasn't just his breath that had changed, it was his relationship to his body. For years, aging had felt like a slow retreat. But now, every evening, Harvey made a conscious step forward, claiming presence, purpose, and patience. His neighbors noticed the difference. He stood straighter. He laughed more. And he began inviting others over to show them how to prepare the leaves. It's not a magic trick, he told them. It's a message to yourself, I'm still worth the care. More than the leaf, it was the ritual that others adopted. That pause. That attention. That quiet promise at the end of each day to treat the body with dignity. Even on difficult nights, when the day had worn him thin, Harvey never skipped the ritual. He said it was like turning a page before sleep, closing the day with intention instead of resignation. And that simple act reminded him, and others, that healing isn't always about removing pain. Sometimes, it's about meeting it with kindness. With each breath beneath the banana leaf, Harvey wasn't just restoring airflow, he was restoring connection. To himself. To others. To the rhythms that keep us human. By the end of the year, Harvey had unknowingly started a quiet movement. His story, first shared in a local wellness blog, had been picked up by national news. Across the country, older adults began experimenting with banana leaf rituals, not because they believed in miracles, but because they believed in possibility. Nursing homes began offering natural remedies workshops, inviting herbalists and elders to co-lead sessions. Wellness clinics included banana leaves in relaxation therapy discussions. One retirement community even created a garden patch just for growing them. Through it all, Harvey remained grounded. He still woke early, watered the banana tree in his backyard, and carefully selected the leaf he'd use that night. When asked what he thought of all the attention, he shrugged. I'm just glad people are listening to themselves again. His granddaughter, inspired by his journey, created a short documentary called The Gentle Breath, which featured stories from other seniors who found comfort through small, intentional routines. The closing scene showed Harvey in his room, laying the leaf across his chest, eyes soft, breath steady. What made this ritual powerful wasn't proof, it was presence. The act itself said, I'm here. I'm paying attention. I matter. Harvey didn't invent anything. He simply remembered. And in that remembrance, he gave thousands of others permission to explore healing on their own terms. Sometimes, the most extraordinary changes come not from hospitals or headlines, but from one person, one quiet evening, and one green leaf against the heart. And that, perhaps, is the kind of medicine the world needs more of. Jake couldn't ignore the coordinates. They pointed to a stretch of forest outside town, government-owned, fenced off, no entry, signs bolted to trees. He knew the area. Grew up nearby. But he'd never seen a Black Hawk circle over it before. Curiosity burned hotter than fear. The next evening, he drove out, parked a mile from the fence, and hiked in. What he found wasn't a base or a bunker. It was a clearing, perfectly circular, with ash-black soil and no vegetation. At its center, a collapsed weather balloon. Or so it looked. But as Jake approached, something beeped beneath his boot. A panel of metal slid open in the ground, revealing a hatch. Suddenly, a voice behind him, soft, controlled. You weren't supposed to find this yet. He spun around. It was her. Same soaked jacket. Same unreadable eyes. Only now, she held a pistol, and a badge. NASA. And it wasn't a weather balloon. Jake raised his hands slowly. You're with NASA? The woman didn't lower the pistol. Her breath was steady. Not anymore. She nodded toward the hatch. You're standing on what they buried. It came down during a Category 3 hurricane in '91. They've kept it quiet ever since. Jake blinked. What is it? She glanced over her shoulder. A vessel. But not ours. And not empty. The words hit like cold water. She stepped closer, finally lowering the gun. My name's Alina Reyes. I wasn't supposed to escape, but the storm gave me cover. You picking me up? That wasn't an accident. They were watching every route but yours. Jake shook his head. Why me? She handed him a folded slip of paper from her jacket, weathered, torn. It had his name on it. J. Tanner, viable. Below it. Compatible atmospheric profile. Neural match, 98.3%. Jake staggered back. Compatible for what? Alina stepped toward the hatch, knelt, and tapped a sequence on a rusted panel. The metal groaned, then split open. A soft pulse of blue light seeped through the seams, steady, organic, like a heartbeat. It's not a weapon, she said quietly. It's a message. Encoded in biology, not sound. And it's been trying to match itself with someone ever since it crashed. Jake stared into the glowing chamber. Inside floated a pod, liquid-filled, with veins of light running through it like neural pathways. Why me? He asked again. Alina didn't answer. Instead, the pod pulsed once, brighter, when he stepped closer. It's never reacted to anyone before, she whispered. Until you. From inside the chamber, something moved. Not violent, curious. Something that tilted toward Jake like it recognized him. Alina turned to him, voice steady. It's been waiting. And now it's choosing. Jake took a step back. But the hatch closed behind him with a hiss. The hatch sealed with a quiet click. Darkness pressed in. Then the blue light brightened, surrounding Jake in a soft glow. He reached for the walls, warm, almost breathing. Suddenly, his thoughts weren't his own. A rush of images flooded him, not memories, but impressions, oceans with 3 moons, forests pulsing with bioluminescent veins, creatures that shimmered like water in sunlight. Then, Earth. But not his Earth. One ravaged by dust. Cities abandoned. Silence everywhere. Jake stumbled back, gasping. The images stopped. His heart pounded, but something inside him shifted, like a question had been asked and answered without words. He looked at the pod. Inside, a shape curled gently, amorphous, silver-skinned, and still. But he could feel it watching. Not with eyes, but presence. It didn't want to invade. It wanted to remember. And through Jake, it could. A voice, not Alina's, not human, whispered in his mind. You still carry what we lost. Jake staggered to his knees, gasping as the presence inside the pod retreated, almost apologetically. Alina helped him up, her eyes wide but calm. It scanned you, she said. Pulled what it needed to see if you matched. Matched what? He asked. Memory. She held up a device, compact, blinking faint green. This isn't just a pod. It's a memory vault. A species' last record, stored in genetic echoes. It's been dormant for decades, searching for a compatible neurological pattern. Jake shook his head. I'm a mechanic. I fix alternators. That's it. No, Alina said, voice gentler now. You're adopted. Born in '84, found in a field. Your blood type's anomalous. No hospital records. Jake froze. She was right. His past was always a gap. Alina stepped closer. You're not an alien, Jake. But your DNA, it holds something they lost. A fragment. She looked toward the pod. And now, it's waking up. No sooner had Alina spoken than the pod pulsed again, brighter, faster. The entire chamber vibrated, as if the connection had triggered something deeper. Outside, a low-frequency hum began to build. Alina's device beeped in warning. She stared at the screen, jaw tightening. They've found us. Jake looked up. Who? She didn't answer. Above them, trees swayed unnaturally, no wind, just pressure. A second later, a distant roar filled the air. Not thunder. Not helicopters. Something else. Alina moved fast, pulling Jake by the wrist. The memory field is active now. Every satellite, every sensor tuned to deep scan biology just lit up. Jake glanced back at the pod. It was glowing gold now, soft, but undeniably alive. They'll think it's a weapon, she muttered. But it's not. Jake narrowed his eyes. Then what is it? She paused at the hatch. A warning. From before Earth. They barely made it out of the clearing. By the time Jake and Alina reached the tree-line, 2 unmarked choppers hovered above, floodlights sweeping the forest like white knives. Move! Alina shouted, dragging him into a ravine just as a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Return the asset. You have 60 seconds. Jake's heart pounded. They mean me, don't they? Alina didn't deny it. It's not just you anymore. The vault fused to your neural path when you touched it. It's part of your biology now. If they get you, they'll try to extract it. Tear it out. A search drone zipped overhead, pausing, scanning. Alina pulled something from her coat. A small, egg-like device. She handed it to him. If I don't make it, run east until you hit the ridge. This will guide you. Jake stared at it. What's it do? She looked him dead in the eyes. It remembers what you forget. They ran until their lungs burned. Finally, hidden beneath the cover of pine and silence, Jake collapsed. The device Alina gave him glowed faintly in his palm, warm, almost pulsing. Then it began. Not visions this time, feelings. He gripped the moss beneath him, overwhelmed by grief that wasn't his, the sensation of losing an entire planet, of watching skies fall, not from war, but from forgetting. The sorrow wasn't loud. It was ancient. Alina knelt beside him. It's starting to sink. You're feeling the archive. He looked up, eyes wet. They didn't come here to conquer, did they? She shook her head. No. They came to pass on what was left. To find someone who could carry the last of them, not through weapons, but memory. Jake stared at the stars above the trees. And for the first time, they didn't feel distant. They felt familiar. The forest had gone silent, unnaturally so. No birds. No wind. Even the choppers had pulled back, as if waiting. Watching. Jake stood, hands trembling. The device in his palm shifted slightly, then unfolded, projecting a lattice of symbols into the air. Floating. Alive. Alina stared, stunned. It never activated like that before. Jake didn't look away. What is it doing? It's asking you, she whispered, if you're willing to carry all of it. Carry what? She took a breath. Their language. Their culture. Their last thoughts. Their grief. Their joy. Their extinction. Jake looked at the symbols, shimmering like glass, whispering without sound. And he understood. Not in words, but in ache. If he said yes, he'd never be just Jake Tanner again. He'd be something more. Something ancient and unfinished. He closed his fingers slowly around the device. Then let me remember. They made it to an abandoned ranger station by dawn. No signal. No satellites. Just pine, fog, and quiet. Jake hadn't slept, but he didn't feel tired, his mind was too full. Not with thoughts, but echoes. Whole civilizations layered behind his eyes. Alina built a small fire. We're safe here. For now. Jake stared into the flames. It's not just knowledge, is it? It's emotion. She nodded. That's what they stored. Not science. Not blueprints. Just what it felt like to be them. He looked up. Then what do I do with it? She handed him a small recorder. Speak it. In your own words. Translate it into human memory. Jake hesitated. Then pressed record. His voice cracked at first. But as he spoke, his tone shifted. Stronger. Deeper. Like someone else was there, not controlling him, but with him. And when he finished the first story, Alina whispered. That wasn't your voice. Jake looked at her. No, it was ours. They uploaded Jake's recording to a closed server Alina trusted, one she said the agency hadn't breached yet. Within 48 hours, the ripple began. People who listened to the file, journalists, archivists, even a podcast host in Iceland, reported strange dreams. Some saw twin suns rising over crystal plains. Others felt overwhelming sadness when walking past stone walls. One woman described a tree that hummed a lullaby when touched. No one could explain it. And yet, all of them described the same phrase echoing in their heads upon waking. We were here. We remember. Through you. Jake sat by the fire as Alina read the messages out loud. They're feeling what you carry, she said. And it's changing them. He looked into the forest. This isn't a story anymore, is it? She shook her head. No. This is emotional inheritance. And in that moment, Jake realized, he wasn't just remembering for them. He was helping the world feel what it had forgotten. By the end of the week, the server was taken down. Alina's contacts stopped replying. One journalist who covered Jake's dream transmission was found missing, his apartment scrubbed clean. Then came the alert, Jake's name on an international watch list. Not as a suspect. Not even as a fugitive. As a containment priority. Drones began circling the forest perimeter. One night, Jake heard his own voice broadcasted over a tactical speaker, distorted, looping. We were here. We remember. Through you. They're using your words to bait you out, Alina said bitterly. Twist the story. Make people afraid. Jake sat motionless, the memory device glowing beside him. They don't understand, he murmured. This isn't an infection. No, she replied. But to them, emotion without control is a threat. Jake stood slowly. Then we don't hide. He picked up the recorder. We tell the rest. They couldn't rely on servers anymore. So Jake did the unthinkable. He walked into town. No disguises. No tech. Just his voice. At a farmer's market, he asked for a microphone. At first, people stared. This was the man from the government bulletins, the one they said carried a neural anomaly. But when he spoke, everything changed. His words weren't political. They weren't loud. He told a story, of light singing through trees that grew upside down, of a species that cried without tears, of a child who remembered the color of loss. And people listened. Some cried. Some just stood still, eyes glazed, feeling something they couldn't name. That night, strangers reported identical dreams. Deserts with 2 moons. Sky rivers. A city made of breath. Jake turned to Alina. They think silencing a server stops a story. She nodded. But stories don't need wires. They need listeners. And now, the whole world was listening. Within days, it spread. Not like a virus, like a melody. A teacher in Nairobi rewrote Jake's story as a children's poem. A dancer in Prague turned it into movement, spirals echoing gravity that had never belonged to Earth. In Tokyo, subway musicians hummed fragments of a lullaby no one taught them. And everywhere, the dreams came. Not just visions, feelings, gentleness before extinction, awe before silence. What began as one man's memory became ours. News anchors called it mass delusion. Scientists scrambled for a name. But the people didn't care what it was called. They just knew it made them remember things they never lived, and love things they never saw. Jake listened to a voicemail from a stranger. "I don't know how, but your story made me call my father. We hadn't spoken in 10 years. He cried." Alina smiled through tears. "It's working." Jake whispered. "It's remembering itself through us." Then came the maps. All over the world, people began sketching the same pattern, on napkins, fogged windows, sand at the beach. Circles within circles, connected by lines that pulsed like constellations. No one understood them. Not at first. Until a group of astronomers overlaid the drawings with deep space readings from 1971, the year the object fell. The match was nearly perfect. It wasn't art. It was a return path. Alina stared at the images, stunned. "They're not just remembering, Jake. They're triangulating. Using us to send a signal back." Jake's voice caught. "To where?" She looked at him, expression somewhere between awe and fear. "Home." And suddenly, it all made sense. The dreams. The resonance. The pull. The reason the pod had chosen Jake, not just to carry what was lost, but to help it find its way back. And Earth was no longer just a witness. It had become the beacon. It started with the sky. Not lightning. Not auroras. But a wave, a shimmer that moved from horizon to horizon like breath over glass. Satellites caught it. Pilots reported brief blackouts, then tears in their eyes without knowing why. And people began to feel it. Everywhere, all at once, the same pause. Conversations halted. Heartbeats quickened. Some dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by an emotion too large to name. Gratitude. Not theirs. Theirs. The ones who had lost everything and left their final memory in a vessel buried beneath a forest in Missouri, now whispering back across time and stars. "We see you. You carried us. You are not alone." Jake stood in an open field, arms lifted, as the shimmer passed overhead. He didn't hear a sound. He felt one. Like a species sighing after holding its breath for 1,000 years. The shimmer lingered for days, faint but undeniable. Governments scrambled. Scientists convened emergency panels. The public split in two. Some lit candles each night, leaving spoons and handwritten notes beneath the stars. Others demanded answers, warnings, defenses. They feared what came next. One news anchor asked, "If they can reach us emotionally, what stops them from taking more?" Jake watched quietly from a rooftop, the memory device in his hand now dim but warm. Alina stood beside him, silent. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said. She looked at him. "But you didn't run from it either." Below, people gathered, spontaneously. Families, veterans, children. Some held drawings. Others wept. All stood beneath the sky, waiting. Jake stepped to the edge. "We can't fear what only wants to be remembered." He held up the device. "Let's answer them. Not with weapons. With memory." That night, across every time zone, people stepped outside. Not because they were told, because they felt called. No speeches. No orders. Just quiet acts, a photo left on a bench. A melody hummed by strangers in the dark. A hand pressed gently to the earth. Jake stood in the field again, the device in his hands. Alina beside him. Across the globe, millions did the same, each one holding something that meant someone. At exactly 9:12 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated, the shimmer returned. But this time, it came down. Beams of golden light rained softly from the sky, harmless, warm, full of soundless vibration. It wasn't communication. It was recognition. The stars didn't just watch. They answered. Not in code. In presence. And as the light passed through Jake, through Alina, through everyone, something embedded long ago, buried deep in the human spirit, flickered awake. The universe had remembered them. Because Earth had remembered first. By morning, the sky was clear. No shimmer. No hum. No sign of the light that had touched the world. But something had shifted. Not in the clouds. Not in the air. In people. Across continents, strangers greeted each other like old friends. Children asked questions they never used to. Veterans smiled at the sky, tears rolling down weathered cheeks. And Jake, he simply sat in the grass, hands resting on his knees, the memory device now dark. Not broken. Just, at rest. Alina joined him, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you feel it? Jake nodded. Like we're not carrying it anymore. She looked up. Because it's everywhere now. In everyone. He smiled, not proud, not triumphant, just peaceful. Because he knew, they didn't save the memory. The memory had saved them, from forgetting who they are when they choose to feel, to listen, to remember. And now, they would never be alone again. Weeks passed. The world didn't end. No alien ships arrived. No governments fell. But the way people treated each other shifted. Hospitals began leaving journals in waiting rooms titled, What I Want Remembered. Libraries added sections for unwritten stories. In cafes, strangers exchanged childhood memories like currency. No one spoke of Jake as a hero. No one needed to. Because his story, their story, had melted into the rhythm of living. Alina began teaching again, but not science. Memory ethics. How to hold what isn't yours. How to pass it gently. Jake? He kept it simple. Planted trees. Repaired things. Sat in silence when people needed space to speak. The device stayed on his shelf, untouched. It didn't glow anymore. It didn't need to. Because the world had become what the memory was trying to be all along. A species that remembers through kindness. And forgets only what must be forgiven. Some said it was over. That the light had passed. That the silence returned. But they were wrong. Because memory doesn't need noise to be real. It lives in the quiet moments. A song that makes your chest ache. A face you've never seen but somehow miss. A dream that feels more like a return than a journey. Jake's story isn't just his. Maybe yours hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's buried beneath years of forgetting. Or maybe, like Jake, you've already felt the pull. So tonight, when the world grows still, and you find yourself looking at the stars without knowing why, listen. Not with your ears. But with that old, aching part of you that still hopes. Because something out there remembers. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for you to remember it, too.